The Temple of Hatshepsut, one of the many ancient splendors dotted around the region of Luxor. Today, Egypt is touted as the land where the sun never sets, attracting hordes of tourists to the unique temple sites. Luxor itself is home to 2/3 of the world's ancient monuments.
Egypt has magic and mystery that no one has in any place in the world.
For many people, a visit to Luxor represents the holiday of a lifetime, one spent months in the planning for. And at first, for Swiss tourist Stefan Kopp, it was everything he had imagined.
Our guide explained us the area, the history behind.
John Laycock's girlfriend, Karina Turner, was holidaying in Luxor at the same time, along with her mother and 5-year-old daughter.
So I thought I'd just give you a call. She went, "Oh, we're in bed." And then the time difference, I realised I'd got it wrong. She goes, "Oh, well, we're getting up first thing in the morning, maybe 4 or 5 o'clock to go on a day trip."
But their holiday in the land of the Pharaohs was about to come to an abrupt and tragic end. On November the 17th, 1997, a very dark cloud would descend upon the city of Luxor. 6 gunmen, armed with automatic rifles, opened fire on foreign visitors at the temple of Queen Hatshepsut.
So it was quite obvious that you pretty soon were going to die.
The Temple of Hatshepsut in Luxor, a magnificent tomb built for one of the most famous queens in Egypt. Hatshepsut ruled Egypt in the time of the Golden Age, 3,000 years ago. Gazing in awe at the ancient paintings adorning the temple walls, faces from across the world flock to this place. Just as they do today, listening to their guides, no one would suspect a horrific act of terror was about to happen. Back in 1997, one of those guides was Egyptian Nala Al-Qadi, who was within the temple.
We saw a little guy, a teenager. Then I saw him coming, so I started feeling there's something wrong. He's not dressed like a police, but people expect it. Probably he's like a civilian police, carry a machine gun. I don't know, I felt like something weird in his smile and the way he's walking. I don't know why I felt bad about him.
With Nala at the time were British tourist Joan Turner, her daughter Karina, and 5-year-old granddaughter Shauna.
So I started to shout, "Everybody lay down, we all should lay down."
And at that moment, we could hear a ring of shots. It was an eerie sound, very uncomfortable. But in the beginning, you thought to kind of diminish the importance of that sound.
Swiss tourist Franziska Müller and her husband Felix were on the opposite side of the temple when the shooting began.
First shots were fired. I stepped a little bit forward and was looking down to the entrance of the temple, and saw Egyptian people in their jabalayas running across the field. And then I knew what I basically knew from the first moment on, that this was a terrorist incident.
The couple climbed over a wall in the temple as 6 men armed with machine guns went on a killing spree.
We could clearly hear what was going on right next to us, behind the wall, people being killed, screaming. So it was quite obvious that you pretty soon were going to die.
I felt probably I'd never see my family again, and I felt probably like it's only a few seconds will be left in my life. I had this feeling like the whole temple still, like, you know, under siege, and there's no way getting out, until I started hearing people dying. I don't know how to tell you the sound, but what I was hearing, the people's death.
You were waiting for the police to arrive or the military to arrive. to hear a siren or a helicopter. And that was probably the most awful thing, that they never showed up. It was for about 40 minutes. They kept on shooting and killing people, and suddenly everything died down completely and totally.
And I started like walking, and then I saw my people here. So I checked her from the back saying, "Are you still alive?" And she was like this with the baby inside, and I said, "Are you still alive?" She didn't answer.
3 generations of one family wiped out in an instant. In all, 62 lives gone in a scene that Felix, a journalist, recalls vividly.
Carnage, I think. Dozens of dead bodies lying around or lying on each other, and some people who miraculously did survive.
Stefan Kopp from Zurich in Switzerland was one of those survivors, but taken from him was his wife Nanette.
I moved me up and looked for my wife, and she was 2 meters beside me on her back, and I realized immediately she was killed. I take my wife in my arms, closed her eyes and mouth.
For Stefan and Nanette, what was to be a happy holiday adventure could never have had a more tragic ending. Nearly everyone in the Swiss tour group would be murdered.
We were, as I said, 29 people in our group, and 22 of them were killed.
They ran for cover, and she didn't make it. She was shot through the face and killed.
Those responsible fled Hatshepsut, intent on taking more lives, and would have been successful were it not for this man, bus driver Hagag Anahas Ali.
I still remember that day and get very emotional, as you can see in my tears. I can't help crying when I remember it. It was a tragedy. They came from that area. I was entering the temple. When their car got closer, the 6 gunmen started to shoot towards me. Then one of them pointed a gun at my neck and ordered me to open the door. They wanted me to take them to the Valley of the Kings nearby.
Though unaware of what had just happened, Hagag knew taking a group of armed men to a crowded tourist site would only have deadly consequences.
First they broke my shoulder, and then they knew I was taking them in the opposite direction. So they hit me in the chest trying to scare me. They kept telling me that they know they will die and that I will die with them. Therefore, I should take them to the Valley of the Kings. I refused and kept praying until the police arrived.
Instead, Hagag would find a group of police at a roadside checkpoint.
Then they saw the police checkpoint and asked me to hit them. I refused. Then I stopped here, and they threatened that they would kill me if I didn't follow their orders. But I didn't, knowing that if they got off the bus, the policemen would chase them, and this was exactly what happened.
Fleeing into the hills, the gunmen ended the slaughter by taking their own lives. Their bodies carried from a cave as local residents looked on in disbelief. The Islamic militant group Jamaat Islamiyah claimed responsibility for the attacks. The gunmen knew what they were doing in targeting Luxor during the peak tourist season. Egypt is heavily reliant on the tourism industry. It alone generates $700 million a year.
Tourists are very important for the income of the tickets to restore the monuments. We make like 50, 60 million Egyptian pounds a month. We use this in building museums, restoring the Egyptian monuments, as we do everywhere. And this is why tourist is very important for the economy of Egypt. Now, I want to tell you one thing. Accidents of terrorists can happen everywhere. But the most important thing, when the Hatshepsut accident happened, every Egyptian was angry. We were so angry. Why those people are against Egypt? They're not against the government, they're against all of us.
They're not Muslims. There's no any religion tell you to kill other people. Definitely they are not. Actually, what's done here at that time, it was not because, it was not in the name of religion, of any religion. It was in the name of the politics. Definitely, this was mainly aiming, killing the tourism industry. So it's something against the economy. It's something to weaken the country, and they did, they succeeded.
By attacking foreign tourists, the organization had hoped to destabilize the economy and the government of President Hosni Mubarak, who visited the site in the aftermath. Mubarak had launched an extensive crackdown on Jamaat Islamiyah members in 1992, uncovering the organization's plan to assassinate him. The massacre affected the people of Luxor more than most, as overnight the city went from being a bustling tourist trap to an eerie ghost town.
It affected the tourism very, very much here. It stopped, many countries about 6 months. There was no any life. It was a dead city at that time.
For some families, there were reunions, but for many tourists, there was no return from Egypt.
And as the massacre itself made headlines across the world, the aftermath and investigation would only prompt more pain and frustration, as some of the victims' bodies were wrongly identified.
Bearing in mind that the body they sent back was 4 inches, the lady was 4 inches taller as well. You don't need to be Einstein to work that one out.
As Egypt and the people of Luxor came to terms with what had happened at Hatshepsut Temple, countries from around the world were counting the death toll of their citizens. "58 foreign tourists, including some 26 Swiss, Japanese couples on their honeymoon, Britons, Germans and others had met their death while on holiday."
What do I have to do with a conflict between Islam and the West? Of course, intellectually I can understand the rationale behind that and why they act like that. That makes completely, on the rational level, completely sense to me. But on the emotional level, the cruelty of their behavior and shooting 5-year-old kids, I think never everything rectifies a behavior like that.
Egypt too had lost 4 of her own people. Nations in mourning and a president determined to take immediate action. So angered by what had happened, Hosni Mubarak would sack his interior minister the day following the attack. But as survivors and other visitors fled Egypt, a terrible series of mistakes would emerge amid the chaos. Stefan Kopp would receive news that the body of his wife, Nanette, was missing.
They came back and said to me that they couldn't find the body of my wife. And I couldn't believe that. I knew exactly my wife was dead, and told them I don't go back from Egypt before I could find the body of my wife. And then after that day, they brought me to a hotel. I was alone. Nobody take care of me.
Through wards filled with wounded victims, Stefan was taken to 6 hospitals hoping to identify Nanette. He then received word that an unidentified body had been found at a hospital for injured British tourists.
You can imagine my condition after that, again, horrible day, to go around all these hospitals to see all these victims, not being able to find the body of my wife. And So in that hospital where these British victims, 4 were, I find my wife.
Yet it would soon emerge that this would not be the only mix-up to occur.
And I did say at the time, I don't think that's them. But they just said, well, it is John, you've got to believe us. Everybody says that.
Flight attendant Karina Turner, along with her mother Joan and daughter Shauna, were killed at Luxor. No. Karina's partner John was astounded basic mistakes had been made when repatriating her body.
Because I knew with the coroner from around here and I phoned him up personally and asked him to just double check things. And bearing in mind that the body they sent back was 4 inches, the lady was 4 inches taller as well. You don't need to be Einstein to work that one out.
With coffins having been wrongly dispatched around the world, a search across 4 continents ensued.
The body of the Luxor massacre victim, Karina Turner, has finally been found 2 months after she was killed.
Karina's body was found and exhumed from a grave in Germany weeks later, while her mother Joan was returned from Switzerland. The torment for the family was incomprehensible.
It took about 11 weeks before we had a funeral. Just takes the mickey really, doesn't it? In my eyes it does. It was hard enough coping, but it was like a comedy of errors that should never have happened.
Many of the victims felt then, and still today, that they were forgotten by the Egyptian government, from whom many were expecting some sort of personal apology.
I believe their attitude was, well, things happen, move on. Don't worry about it, pal. That's the impression that I got.
But Egypt quite simply had to move on from the tragic events of November 1997. And for the authorities, it was essential for holidaymakers to return.
Yeah, I think their point of view is, let's not talk any longer about this because this might be of disadvantage for tourism. So there's a certain rationale behind that attitude. I don't think it's an honest attitude. It's kind of a selfish attitude.
The Swiss government, who had lost 26 of its people in the Luxor massacre, launched their own investigation. But it was eventually closed following a lack of cooperation from the Egyptian authorities. And many questions remained unanswered, especially about the true mastermind behind the attack. Members of Jemaah Islamiyah in Egypt tried to distance themselves from the gunmen. Those responsible were from a rogue foreign cell of the organization with roots in Afghanistan. Despite this, a nationwide campaign saw hundreds jailed and extensive resources deployed to secure Egypt's tourist sites. Experts argue further attacks in Egypt against tourists along the Sinai Peninsula earlier this decade are the result of a void in political dialogue between the government and opposition groups.
This is every parent's nightmare.
Jemaah Islamiyah released a revised ideology in late 2007 which bans attacks on foreigners. Despite this move, political freedom in Egypt has been stifled. The restrictions placed on the press in Egypt and sensitivities of reporting on the massacre at Hatshepsut are still obvious today. Armed minders, internal security and uniformed police observe and report every movement to the authorities.
By not allowing opposition, to speak up, let's say officially, by the media or television or things like that, this enhances the danger that the opposition does find other ways to express their feelings, their attitudes, to pursue by other means their political goals. In my opinion, must raise the possibility that sooner or later something like that could happen again.
But if it does, this time Luxor is prepared.
Of course, the situation is completely changed now, but we are concentrating, and the people, they are going to, I do not want to defend, but to secure the town in Luxor. And I think the highest emergency plan to secure a town in Egypt, now it is in Luxor, since this accident.
Luxor's governor says there was little option but to increase security in the city to the point where no tourist would feel threatened again. If visitors didn't return, the people of Luxor could never survive.
I find it very safe, the streets, the people, and no hesitation on coming back to Egypt.
We've been Far East, we've been to the Caribbean, we've been to the States. We don't feel any less safe here than we do anywhere else. The police presence is reassuring, it's unobtrusive. I know we feel fine here, no trouble.
So, as tourists again flock to both Egypt and Luxor, it is often easier to leave what was done in the past.
You know, sometimes it is a bad memories for everybody. So sometimes I do not want to talk, but if you ask me, I can talk. I'm talking now to you. But the people also here in Luxor, they want to forget it. And that is already finished.
Though in some people's minds, the events of that November day live on.
I see them back. I hear shots. It's like it's back. It's back for like a series of nightmares that they are back.
While for others, memories are all they have left.
There is no explanation, certainly not any excuse or so. No, never, never. To attack lives of people not involved, no, never, never. I can whether give explanation on that, nor can I forgive. I think the best I can do is to keep my wife in best memory, to see her daily on a picture or so, to be grateful that I had her.
A great love lost, but with hope, a great lesson learned.
Luxor means what extremism can lead to. Luxor shows that people are very easily able to kill innocent people for some political goals, for political fanatism. And it's in a way shows the worst in mankind.